Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom.
BV's production of Into the Woods looks very different than what you might expect. It doesn't look anything like the Disney movie. It doesn't look anything like the original Broadway version. It will be a surprise to audiences to discover that we have no woods and that the stage is filled only with scaffolding and plastic sheeting and garbage cans and brown cardboard boxes and moving industrial tables. And it is into that world that comes the color and the splash of the imagination of a child who's living in the real world but longs for a world that maybe has the chance of a happily ever after.
The musical Into the Woods was originally produced in the late 80s. And it was done as a mashup of all of the standard fairy tales. As you move through the first act, you have the quest, whatever the quest is, and in this case it's to get a curse reversed on the baker. The quest usually has, problems, and it has obstacles to go around and different things that have to be accomplished. And so at the end of the first act, you've got that accomplished. Everything's happy, everybody's married to whom they're supposed to be, and we're ready for the next version. And that's where this particular musical is fun, because the next day is afterwards. What happens after those particular fairy tales end.
A sad young lad and a childless baker with his wife.
What are you with, my dear?
Grandmother, what large eyes you have.
The better to see you with, my dear.
Grandmother, what large hands you have.
The better to hug you with, my dear.
My grandmother, what a big, terrible, wet mouth you have.
The better to eat you with.
Agony's reach. Whoa, it's different for each. Always 10 steps behind, always 10 feet below, and she's just out of reach. Agony that can cut like a knife. I must have her to have a child, to get the money, to kill the wolf, to go to the kingdom, to have to wed, to get to say, to build, to get to go to the festival, into the woods, into the woods, into the woods, into the woods.
To be continued?
To be continued.
And happy ever after.
Into the Woods seems to be about fairy tales, but really what it's about are very human experiences and emotions. So while the stories focus on fairy tale characters, it really is about serious human reality, sadness. Bad things happen in the world, and you can't control that. And do you just give up and sit down and stop living, or do you pick the pieces up and you move on? And this is the year when I have been very focused on how do we pick up pieces? What is it that causes a person to decide that even though it's broken, the pieces are worth picking up and putting them back together and moving on to something that's new? And so this musical seemed to be the right thing to do.
I never thought I'd be so much I hadn't been. I'm so happy.
Where is the lad who killed my husband?
There's no lad here. We haven't seen him.
I want the lad who
As we were thinking about the idea of a construction area, one of the things that we readily grabbed a hold of was we could use scaffolding, because in Into the Woods you have elevations. Rapunzel has to be in a tower. You have other towers that are alluded to, so you have to have that secondary height. And so by building some tables, we could put people on them. We could put people up in the scaffolding to denote a higher area. One of the issues with the play is you start in the late afternoon and you move from there into the first midnight. How do you light midnight? I mean, the only perspective that you have at that time of day is the moon. And so the moon has to play a large part. Colors that I've chosen are, we have greens, we have purples, we have blues. And with that in mind, we're trying to show what the bounced light looks like, but not overly lighted. Within the world of sound, we have a full pit that supplies most of the musicality, but there are so many opportunities to do sound effects. I'd rather hear it as a effect or as a background or accenting what's going on with the pit. Having ambient sound for a forest with the pit playing over the top of it is a cool thing. So we rented a set of 16 body mics for the cast, and we've been able to manipulate that and pull a couple more in so that nearly everybody has a body mic. And with that, we need people who can engineer that, people who can run that. So the sound team is actually very taxed for this one, because they're running between 16 and 20 open mics at any given time. And on top of that, we have recorded sound effects that we're engineering and playing into the course of the play. A lot of what happens in a design is you start with a concept, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. And so you're backing up and then going forward. You know, that idea of 2 steps forward, 1 step back does really happen in the design process when you put it on its feet. You can draw it out and it looks different than whenever you stand it up. And hopefully when it stands up, it looks good.